Hey, good evening and welcome back, world. Welcome to another episode of Politics, Economics, the Struggle to Survive in America. I'm your host as usual. My name is Jerrald President. Today I brought my guest along. Not even a guest, it's my firstborn. His name is
Cedric President.
And today I'm just going to dive right into it. I'm going to be talking about this voter suppression that's real in America, that's always been real to descendants of slaves. So I'm going to give you and just let you listen to Mr. Paul Weyrich, the founding member of ALEC.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
Did you understand that? He said our leverage goes up when the vote count goes down. What he really means is when we don't have people voting, we win elections. That's from 1980. He started a group, ALEC, in 1973. Richard Nixon was the president. I want you to understand something. Living here in America and understanding that the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, George Washington, these individuals, Thomas Paine, these individuals crafted a document that excluded my ancestors, his ancestors, from ever being able to participate. And they explicitly stated only white men who own land could vote. Now, I want you to understand and ponder that. This nation explicitly, from its origins of the Bill of Rights and Constitution, stipulated only white men who own land could vote, which meant white women, white men who didn't own land, neither, because slaves. Why? Because we was considered property. Now, this is what was going on in America. This is what was going on in America at the beginning and the birth of this nation. Now, I want you to understand that was 1980. Here we are in the midst of unprecedented voter suppression in the digital era. Oh, my Lord. And it's scary. What do you think about that, young fella? Being that you are 24, you're a registered voter.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about just what you heard from Mr. Weyrich?
Well, it just goes to show who they want to control this country, that they don't want us to have a voice, and that they don't want us to be a part of the American dream. Which you saw so eloquently say the American nightmare.
And it's always been a nightmare to the descendants of slaves. And what's scary is your generation, they're going to make sure your generation don't have nothing.
True.
So they make it seem like it's simple. You need voter ID to vote. I'm going to explain something to you.
Well, why do you have to have a separate identification? Why can't you just walk in with your ID? It says that you're a state resident. So,
well, see, that's the beautiful thing about living in America. They let you know your place. See, there never was no such thing as voter ID. But they came up with this because they didn't want black people, and they hate that black people understand and realize these shenanigans and these boo games. It go back to when they freed the slaves and they came up with the 15th Amendment to the Constitution. And even way back then, once they gave us the right to vote. Now, I'm going to be real quick, and I'm just going to give you a brief sample of what the 15th Amendment to the Constitution says. And this is from the Library of Congress. And as usual, I'm going to post this while I'm speaking.
First, you got to preference, this is part of voter suppression. Right.
Correct.
Here,
this is all Amendment. Voter suppression, because the only reason we have the right to vote is because of the 15th Amendment. I want you to understand something. The descendants of slaves only have a right to vote because of the 15th Amendment. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson made sure that we didn't have that right, which is why we was considered property. But I would just listen real quick to what's in the 15th Amendment to the Constitution. Again, this is from the Library of Congress. The 15th Amendment to the Constitution granted African American men the right to vote. You gotta understand something. White women didn't even have the right to vote at this point. This is how wretched and wicked these individuals were dealing with. I'm talking about the white supremacist power structure. I'm not talking about the white men, because those white men, they was excluded from this too. They just allowed them to participate in it because they have the same complexion. They don't get none of the benefits. They just have the benefit of being in that complexion. So I'm going to say it again. The 15th Amendment to the Constitution granted African American men the right to vote by declaring that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. There wasn't no Mexicans. There wasn't no Haitians. There wasn't no Jamaicans. There wasn't no Cubans. It was black and white, period. They didn't even allow European people from South and Central America to come to America until 1965 with the Cuban Naturalization Act of 1965, which coincided with the Voters' Right Act. That's another subject. But you need to understand, this is what's in the 15th. It was only for African American men who was former slaves. That's who it was written for. Just think about that. Just think about that, boy. They had to write a special amendment just to give me and you the right to vote.
That tells you the original intent of the Constitution, that it was not meant for us to vote. It was not meant for us to have that freedom of speech. The first 10 the first 10 the Bill of Rights was not meant for us.
Never was.
Everything up to the 15th Amendment was not meant for us at all. So all of that stuff, and like you said, Kavanaugh, the new Supreme Court justice, he said that he wants to go back to the original intent of the Constitution.
Yeah.
So, in other words, to me, he's saying that he wants to go all the way back before 1870 to where we were not considered to be human beings. We were not considered to be a citizen or any of that. We were not able to vote, none of that. So, if that's his true intent, you know.
And see, and I love how you slid that in. The original intent, when you hear these constitutional thumpers talking about the original intent of the Constitution, always remember the original intent of the Constitution explicitly stated that I was 3/5 of a person.
Yeah.
I was 3/5 of a person. It explicitly stated that I could never be a U.S. citizen. Why? Because of the 1790 Naturalization Act stipulated only way you could be a citizen, you had to be a white male, a white person,
A white European.
a white European male or female, and had to be in America for 2 years. That's the 1790 Naturalization Act.
Didn't they have to own land at that point too?
Yes.
You had to be a land.
And that was the stipulation. Well, these people that was coming from Europe, they didn't own the land. The land was in the hands of the people who crafted the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And that's what's amazing about America is here we are in 2018. I live in the state of Florida. They have, 1.4 million. If you've been convicted of a felony, you can't ever get the right to vote.
Yeah.
You can't ever get the right to vote.
And that's interesting. And like with the 15th Amendment, it states that the only way that you're not able to vote or you're not considered a U.S. citizen is if you've been convicted of a crime. And so what is the main population of the jails and of these prisons? It's mainly people that look like me and you.
Which is why they slid that little special
Clause in there.
and the 13th Amendment that stipulated, except if you've been duly convicted of a crime, where they can take you back into servitude. Mm-hmm. That's the beautiful thing. That's why I always say I love America, because they don't hide this stuff. They know, but they know that you're not going to even pay attention to it because you're dealing with all the little mundane, little ancillary things that go on in your everyday life. They're not understanding the ramifications of just this simple thing. Now, I'm going to say it again. The 15th Amendment to the Constitution granted only African American men the right to vote. Now, I want you to say something. There's no constitutional clause that says any person in America has the right to vote. That's what a lot of people don't understand. That's how they can play these shenanigans that they play with these words. And then they go back and forth to the United States Supreme Court, and they play the game. I'm going to say it before. I said this in the last show. The United States Supreme Court was always the guardian, the vanguard of the white supremacist power structure in America. They've always used the Supreme Court to rubber stamp. But I want you to understand something. Congress is above the United States Supreme Court. All Congress has to do is pass an amendment to guarantee everyone the right to vote. Now, I'm going to say something to you what's sad, my son. Mm-hmm. When you was born, I had to get your Social Security number, and I had to get your birth certificate.
Okay.
Now, you were born in America, in the United States, you're a U.S. citizen by birth because of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution guaranteed. Again, the 14th Amendment was only for descendants of slaves. Was stipulated if you was born in America. If you was born in America, then you could be a U.S. citizen. But why do they have to do that? Because it goes back to the Dred Scott decision. When Dred Scott decided that he wanted to escape and got all the way to Missouri, and they say, nah, man, you're property. You can never. You are a descendant of a slave. You can never. That's the Marshall Court. That's the United States Supreme Court. So white men have to pass legislation to stop other white men from even denying us the right to be U.S. citizens. We were born here. We were born here. We're not going nowhere. I'm not going nowhere. But just imagine that. This is the kind of wickedness that we live and we're under here in America.
Yeah.
The constant degradation of black men, black women, of the black body, which is why they can constantly close polling stations.
Yeah.
You know, they just close the polling station and say, hey, no, man, there's not people. Oh, we can take you off the road because you ain't voted in 2 years.
Yep. It's all part of the zoning and the redistricting of certain areas. So, but it all goes back to, you know, like you said, Congress is able to enact a bill and bring a bill forward and pass it to where anyone can vote. All you gotta do is just show your ID.
Yeah.
Show that you're a U.S. citizen, or show your social security card, whatever the case may be. They can come up with something to where, as long as you're a U.S. citizen, even if you was convicted, even if you did a crime, you obviously, if you're out, you should be able to vote because you paid your debt to society.
But you know what's sad? When you was born, you weren't given the right to vote right then.
No.
You had to wait till you're 18. But for some strange reason, he was given his Social Security birth certificate from birth. But you can't do the same thing and give you that right to vote right then. Give you your voter's registration number right then. Mm-hmm. Because you can't use it till you're 18 anyway. Same thing with your Social Security number. You ain't using that till you turn 18. This is when you start to apply for credit and going to school.
Yeah.
Or when you're going to the service or any of these types of things. That's the only time you're going to use that Social Security number. Outside of that, your parents are using it to get you into school and to get you into certain other services that might be sponsored by the city that you live in.
True.
That shows you when you live in a nation that then made up all of these different laws, they're not nothing that came out of no sky. These was men sitting in the room, just like me and my son is sitting in the room, and they just crafted this type of legislation. But they didn't think that me and him would exist. That's why they wrote it the way they wrote it. Yeah. They never thought that it'd be something like this. And that's the beautiful thing about living here in America. They show you one thing, but in reality, it's a whole different ball game. What's the next one we have on note?
Well, what's poll taxes? States' rights, poll taxes.
All right, poll taxes. See, that's an amazing thing. After the Civil War, and in 1865, they passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. It wasn't ratified till like 1866, along with the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And so what these individuals, the white supremacists, they're like, nah, man, it's not going to work here, man. We got states' rights. And you think that you're going to just let these niggers, that's what they called us, these slaves, they're not going to get a chance to vote. So after we was free, you had blacks that was winning state going to Congress. Mm. And so these white folks say, no, Reconstruction set in. And in 1890, as a legal way to keep African Americans from voting in southern states, poll taxes was essentially a voting fee. Eligible voters were required to pay the poll tax before they could cast a ballot. A grandfather clause excused some poor whites from payment if they had an ancestor who voted before the Civil War. But there were no exemptions for African Americans. That's American history. Smithsonian again. The Library of Congress. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So you get the poll taxes. Then after the poll taxes, and they kept saying you can't do that to them. So, hey, now, hell, here's a jar of jelly beans. Count how many jelly beans in there, boy. And if you can tell me how many jelly beans in this, now you can't dump them out.
No.
But if you can count how many in that jelly, that jar right there, hey,
nobody knows who that is.
Exactly.
What that is.
That's how
even
gangsta America is.
Even they don't know.
Of course they don't know that. That's the beautiful thing about America. They do these things and then they go around the world and perpetuate fraud and say that we about freedom, democracy. Ain't never been something in America about freedom. Ain't never been no such thing as democracy. Because if I'm correct, the United States is a constitutional republic. And yes, so
like pretty much when you pledge allegiance to the flag, say I pledge allegiance to the flag for which it stands, and to the republic
for which it stands. One nation under God. God ain't looking at America. America just came at the end of all the rest of recorded history. That's all. That's why I was so technologically advanced.
But no, you're getting away from the point. The point is that when you say the Pledge of Allegiance, you pledge allegiance to the republic.
To the republic, correct.
No, it's not a democracy.
Correct. That is true. I always say I do ramble on. I try to get back. I do ramble on. I appreciate that. You're right. It's a republic.
But what is a republic?
Something that the Greeks came up with. It ain't nothing. It's just a word. See, that's the thing about America. That's the thing about how white supremacy functions. They come up with these fancy words.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Fancy words that don't mean nothing.
Yes, sir.
You understand? They always come up with these freedom. What is freedom? Everybody's born free. You don't need to say the word freedom.
Yes, sir.
Everybody's born free on this planet, but that's how gangster they are. They use these words and these slick metaphors, and then they put it in some type of beautiful looking book, and they tell you these are laws. These are laws made by men that want to control other men. Well, like I say, here's another one. They give us the automatic right from birth.
Yes, sir.
Don't talk about any identification card. When did you win? Come on now. You think they were using identification cards when they gave George Washington his nomination in that little smoke-filled room?
No.
The citizens of America never voted for George Washington. Never didn't vote for him. But again.
Well, okay, that goes into even now. The citizens of America don't vote for the president. It's the Electoral College, which is 2 votes for each state. And to be a voter of the Electoral College, you pretty much have to be a white man and a landowner, which goes back to the original intent.
Correct. And that's the beautiful thing about living in America. They always know how to take you back to what it really meant. So there's no need to get angry. You have to understand their imaginations and how they maneuver things in this matrix that we're in. That's the beautiful thing about what they do.
Yeah.
They know that you didn't realize what they're doing, but they so slick with the pen. They just go right ahead and change that and, scratch it out and move on to the next one. On to the next one. They always on to the next one.
Yes, sir.
We right now getting ready to go to elections in all these states. And they didn't close down polling stations. They did not. They're basically purging like they did in 2000. Thousands of people from they don't even know that they don't even have opportunity to go and vote. Why? Because that's how they always functioned. This is just a new poll tax. This is just that new literacy test.
Yes,
this
sir.
is what all America's always done. So I always say, that's why I'm so proud to wear my shirt that I'm a descendant of a slave. Why? Because I understand what my people came through. They went through all these shenanigans. They went through where they was denied the right. And then you have somebody who came from Europe in the 20th century trying to tell you need an identification card, which most of these white men that you see on television, their ancestors came through Ellis Island after World War I. But no, you know what? I don't want to go now because I will start saying certain things, and I don't want to do it on this one. I need you to understand that 15th Amendment was only for black people. It was only for African Americans. It wasn't for nobody else. But once again, it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, as usual, hey, man, we're a colorblind nation. We only became a colorblind nation when they gave black people the right to vote. Black men.
Yeah, 1965, the voters, the Civil Rights Act, well, the Voters' Rights Act. And then a lot of that the Civil Rights Act it helped out way more people, meaning white women, immigrants. It helped out a lot more people other than the African Americans or the descendants of slaves that it was intended for.
Correct, but that's how they do it all the time. They just want to include everybody in it.
Yeah.
Now it's called peoples of color. Ain't no such animals, peoples of color. Ain't no such animals, peoples of color.
Well, because they didn't go through 300 years of slavery like we did, so they don't get...
No.
Their struggle is not compared to the same as those who are descendants of slaves.
But then it goes deeper into why did the civil rights and these civil rights leaders want to include? And see, that shows you when you don't have any power, you're forced to take on other people's issues. Well, you think that you're better in numbers. So let me go get this Hispanic person on this side because they suffer from working in those, picking oranges in California. And let me go get these Chinese people, they tired of working in the cleaner business. Mm-hmm. Let's all incorporate. No, they're not descendants of slaves. They're
not the ones who built this country.
No, and they was never subjected to the inhumane actions by these white men that claim to be so Christian-like.
Yeah. But it's like, at the same time, it's not like we saying that we don't like these people or nothing. All we're saying is that descendants of slaves are a peculiar people and that they need extra... the things that were put in place for us, we need to be claimed. And it should only be for us because we're the ones who went through slavery. We're the ones who built the South. We're the ones who built the White House. We're the ones who built America. So America was built off the backs of our ancestors.
That's right.
Not by these people who come from Europe and the Italians and the people from South America and Central America. They didn't build America. All they're doing is working in America now.
Free labor. We was free labor.
We was free labor.
We was free labor. And for those who never have read the Emancipation Proclamation, even Abraham Lincoln wanted to send us back to Africa, to the colony that they were started under the Monroe administration. They wanted to send us back to Africa, to recolonize Africa with ex-slaves. Why you think Liberia is so, backwards? But that's why we can't know where we're going until we understand where we came from, which is why they keep pushing the Bible. They give you that Bible, and they always tell you, learn this history. It's the reason why they don't ever want you to know your history here in America. I'm not saying don't read the Bible. That's not what I'm espousing. What I'm saying is, before you go and grab that, grab the history books here in America to understand they use that. That's why black folks are always saying, just go and pray on it, baby. Pray on it. Pray on it. You get your blessings. We ain't got those blessings yet. And believe it or not, I want more than the 40 acres and a mule. I'm all about reparations. And that's what bothers me more than anything is you keep flooding this nation with these immigrants from Africa, from South and Central America, from India. Mm-hmm. And then you classify them as minorities, going back to the Civil Rights Act, when they, in the Civil Rights Act of 65, when they included Title IX and they threw women in there and everybody else. They weren't oppressed like my grandfather, my father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, grandmama's grandpa. They didn't have to deal with none of that stuff. They didn't have to worry about somebody coming burning down their church, or crosses being burnt in their front yard, or having to go to substandard schools to be indoctrinated by this Western BS. That's how phenomenal, how sad it is what has happened to us. Excuse me. Yet we keep playing this game. And we play the game, that's why we never win. That's why they keep bringing these foreigners in, because those foreigners don't have that mindset. They think, hey man, this is good.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity.
I got running water, electricity, I get in,
what y'all black folks complaining for?
Yeah. Hey man, I work 3 and 4 jobs. Yeah, well, we did all that stuff. We still
we did all that with no pay.
No pay.
Y'all getting paid. We didn't get paid.
And now for those that's sitting there, probably sitting there saying, why you talking about something that's so far back? No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It's happening right now. And then you play this game.
Well, to be more specific, when you get locked up, you're giving away all your rights. That slave labor, that's what's going on in the prisons now. Hmm. You got people, they got crops that they're growing out there. They got, they're making shirts and they're making jeans. A lot of things that say made in the USA, they're made right there on the federal prisons and the penitentiaries. So, and they're made for pennies on the dollar if not free.
It's always free, and if they are getting paid, they take it back from them because you working. You are an indentured servant. But per the Constitution, the 13th Amendment says, hey, if you've been duly convicted of a crime, you can go back to be a slave.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these products are made. When you make these phone calls, you don't know if you're talking to a person that's inside that jail. This computer, this keyboard, the keyboard is made inside of prisons, right here in America. So when Trump talked about he's bringing these jobs back, yeah, it's a lot of those jobs right in those private prisons. And I said private prisons. I mean, yeah, goddamn. Boy, in America, something else. Like, God, oh, God. Yeah. God. What's the last? What's on now?
Yeah, we already covered it.
All right. So once again, thank you for listening to an episode of Politics, Economics, and the Struggle to Survive in America. I'm your host, Jerrald President.
And I'm Cedric President.
Peace.